Awesome. Great. Welcome everyone to the Home Services Summit webinar series. This whole program is all about getting some really good information and content and experience shares from fellow founders and CEOs of home service brands. And today we are lucky enough to have Patrick on to talk to us about his experience recently selling his business to the Riverside Company. Just real quick, my introduction, I'm Scott Abbott, one of the founders of 5 Star Painting and the CEO of ProNexis, where our mission is to transform the customer experience in the home services industry through voice, chat, text, and now offering instant booking. Our format is pretty straightforward and simple. We'll do a 45-minute Q&A with Patrick and hear about his experience. And then we'll move to 15 minutes at the very end for open questions, which you can do by just commenting on the YouTube link that you've been given. And go ahead and put those in anytime you'd like. They'll just kind of sit there, and when the time comes, I'll pull them up and ask questions of Patrick for you. A few housekeeping items. As you all know, on the first Thursday of every month at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, we'll have one of these shows happening. And next month, we've got Josh Skolnick coming in, the founder of Monster Tree, and now launched a new brand called Horsepower Brands and Mighty Dog Roofing. He'll be coming in and talking about his transaction, selling his business to Authority Brands. So you'll definitely want to tune in for that. He's a lot of fun to talk with. So let me go ahead and just do a quick introduction for Patrick on some of his background, then we'll get into some questions. So Patrick began his career with USA Insulation when he joined the family business, USA Insulation of Cleveland, in 2004. So he's been in the business for quite a while. After spending 2 years in the Cleveland flagship, learning everything from lead gen, sales, installation, and asset management, he spearheaded the growth of the business via franchising. With the help of key staff members, he has grown the business to over 50 units in 13 states. I think, and just backstage here earlier, Patrick mentioned he's now at 60, so congratulations on that growth. He's become the largest residential retrofit installation franchise system in the U.S. In 2015, USA Insulation acquired their longtime supplier of their proprietary foam insulation and moved the operation from New York to Cleveland, Ohio, where he's based. And now the product is being made in the same facility where the franchisor resides, making quality control and distribution a key component of their success. I'd love to talk to Patrick a little bit more about that. Being in the manufacturing business and franchising business at one time must have its own challenges. In December of 2020, USA Insulation was acquired by Riverside, and Patrick has stayed on as a brand president and is really pumped about the opportunity he's got right now growing that business. So with that intro, Patrick, welcome. Thank you so much for giving us some of your time here. Let's jump right into it. Why don't you go ahead and just talk to us a little bit about yourself, kind of your experience up until now, and why you're in the insulation business.
Yeah, and Scott, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be on today, and hopefully we can get through all these questions you have. I'm excited to be here. A lot of what you covered, I won't dig too deep into. I'm born and raised here in Cleveland, Ohio. My father started this business 36 years ago on the east side of Cleveland. And what we've done for the last 30 years is really just focusing on existing residences. We make homeowners more comfortable, help them save energy bills every month. And we really started this business in the early 80s, insulating a lot of commercial buildings. And when that business started to get a little different, we realized that kind of working around trades and bidding on jobs became cumbersome and frankly eroding our margins. We shifted our focus to residential retrofit work, which honestly, even to this day, is not a predominant market. Most of the markets that we're in now, we are either the leader, at least in marketing, but also in servicing our customers, which we're really excited about. But a little bit more about me starting off. I didn't start off in the business. My father made me work, but never with the business. So when I grew up through it, he really wanted me to kind of stay away from it. To him, this was a business that he wanted to provide for his family, and a business that he wanted to focus on, but didn't necessarily want his kids to be involved. So I went away to college and studied hotel restaurant management, which I never fully utilized after my graduation, but wanted to come back home. And after 5 years of working for a large corporation named Aramark, which was a wonderful opportunity for me and really helped me kind of solidify and learn more about the corporate environment, took some of those skills and brought it back home to Cleveland. And for the first couple of years, just worked in the operation, worked in marketing, worked in sales. It was a chance for me to learn from my father, but also take some of the things that I worked and learned from a prior experience and bring it to USA. In those 2 years, we kind of grew the business from 1.2 million to about 3. Added a couple of trucks, really focused on our marketing and really our branding, frankly, because we were a little bit disjointed with how we went to market. And at one point, after about 18 months, I looked around and I asked my father, I said, why aren't we doing this anywhere else? And his answer was, I don't want to go anywhere else. This is where I want to be. And I said, well, I'd like to pursue that. And we didn't have the money to go open up company stores in places like Pittsburgh or Indianapolis or Detroit. We didn't really trust anybody else with our money to run the business for us. My father barely trusted me with the QuickBooks program that he had going. So we found franchising and found a consultant company to help us get started in 2006. Took about a year to get our act together from the FDD to all of our ops manuals. Sold our first franchise in 2008. And that's when we really learned about franchising. You know, when the first questions start coming in from a franchise owner that gave a lot of his money to you and wants to understand how to grow that business, I think we understood it, but we really learned a lot in that first year. And our second granting of our franchise was to our sales rep in Cleveland, which was a great story. He kind of saw the success of our first unit and said, why aren't I doing this myself? I love the product. I love the business. Why can't I do this? So we started growing slowly throughout that process. As you'd mentioned, 2015 was kind of a big year for us. We had a single supplier of product, and we could talk more about that if there's time, but our product is fairly unique. It's an injectable foam. It's made for closed cavities, so it goes in like a shaving cream and hardens up almost like styrofoam. And it's designed for existing residences. And the challenge that we had is it wasn't really ours. You know, we were buying it from a third party. We convinced that person who was sunsetting his career to sell it to us. We bought it, brought all the manufacturing over to Cleveland, which was a pretty daunting task. And we realized that we needed to focus on that, not only for quality control, but we wanted to be able to be vertically integrated. So be able to service customers in Cleveland, to franchise our model across the country, but provide that single product that differentiated ourselves from others all out of our Cleveland office, which was really important. And then as we started to progressively grow throughout the last couple of years, got a phone call in the summertime of last year, kind of in the heart of COVID, and had a discussion with the Riverside company. And I know Riverside well. I know they're actually a couple miles down the road is where they were founded on the banks of the Cuyahoga River. So I always knew their pedigree and what they've done in the past with Dwyer Group and now Neighborly. So they're a kind of an aspirational brand to talk to. And as one thing led to another, signed an LOI, worked through due diligence, and we sold the business to them in December, late December, 2 days before Christmas of this last year. And my business partner and I both rolled equity over into the holding company and stayed on in our current roles. So we're excited about that.
Oh, I love it. That's there's so many things I want to pick apart there as you kind of told your story. And I'm sure many founders on this call are probably just kind of nodding their heads about how you've described those early days of franchising. And I'd love to just talk a little bit about, you know, how you made that transition from being an operator of an installation company to being a franchisor. Mm-hmm. Kind of maybe just share with us, what are some of those takeaways and how did you make that transition and what did you find the most challenging?
Being an operator, if you will, that was the easy part. You know, to me, it was the servicing of our franchisees, helping them through our 4-step proven process. That was easy. It was the questions that they had about how to scale their business and when to do it were challenging. So we had to kind of dig a little deeper and look back into our processes in our Cleveland office to kind of root those out and make sure they were defined all the way through. Franchise development was something for us that we never fully committed in. And I'll tell a story about that in a few minutes, but we've always leveraged a third party, even for the first couple of years, first 10 years, truthfully, that would rep our brand and a couple of other ones. We needed to do that, and it worked for us, but we only granted a few territories per year. It allowed us to slowly grow, and we had the luxury of having time. I was a bit younger, and I had that, you know, kind of methodical growth approach. But also, I found throughout my career that it was all about the people that we brought on, and not just their skill sets, but their experience, their demeanor, their mentality. Finding the right people in the right seat have been really helpful for us. The first 5 to 7 years, we frankly leverage a lot of third-party folks, from
Mhm.
operations support to training, and even development.
So maybe let's talk a little bit about that transition once again, because I've talked about and thought about, the move from going from selling insulation and operating an installation company to now where I look at franchising is very much an intellectual property company, right? Or an education company, a training company. Let me just talk to us about your training system. As you mentioned, a 4-step program. Talk to us about how what that is. How did you create your training system, and why has it been so successful?
But we're always creating it, Scott, every day. I mean, we
Yeah.
have a call 2 hours ago at how we're refining kind of our sales process. We're getting a lot better at our LMS process and program, a lot more short videos. We had manuals that were just stacked, right? And they'd always end up on somebody's shelf. And it was difficult for us to cascade that information to people. So a lot more field support. We have been training in I call them in silos. So our marketing people train the marketing component of the business. Our in-home sales support folks train the in-home sales piece. And then our install and operations support staff works there. So it's being in the home services world, that there are a lot of moving parts to it, but we had to really shore up, what do the owners need? Like, what do the owners really want and really need to go out there and exceed the customer's expectations? And to us, it was honing in on what those were. I had a chance to watch last month's segment with Mike Bidwell. He made a great point about, we have to think with them in mind first. Put yourself in their shoes and understand, well, how is this going to impact them, and especially not just the owner, but their staff. We have line level staff that work on trucks that, they can work their phone real well, but they may not be as tech savvy on a computer. How do we get that knowledge to them? So we have a third-party LMS software program that's easy to use and easy to manage. We have videos that are up that they can watch that are short segments from 2 to 4 minutes as opposed to 30 minutes that, none of us really have the attention span to watch. So those are some of the things that have really helped us leverage and grow. And we're even looking now with our process, and we have a 5-year plan starting on December 23rd of last year. How are we going to achieve that? And to us, it's the sales and development's one piece that I feel like is a bit easier for us. Honestly, it's how are we going to make sure that we can launch, support, train, and grow these franchisees and make it replicable every single time we do it.
I love that. And I think even maybe a little bit later, we can get into, some of the changes we've had to make as a franchisor in this COVID environment where so many things are being now done remotely. Zoom call, discovery days are now done through Zoom sometimes for some brands. I know for even our own brands, we're doing a lot just through remote.
Sorry, Scott, I think I lost your last audio feed there. I couldn't hear you. I just saw your lips moving.
Sorry, maybe if you could, yeah, my mic just kind of turned off for a second. I'm not sure why. Maybe you could just talk us through your organization. What does it look like today? How many people do you employ, and what do they do in your company?
So we have 3 distinct businesses, and again, Riverside has them all now, so we're still in operations of all 3 of them. We have our service business based in a town called Willowick. It's about 10 miles outside of Cleveland. There are service business that manages and sells and installs insulation throughout Northeast Ohio. We have our franchisor, that's USA Insulation Franchise LLC, that has about 15 employees that support our franchisees in the field. And then we have a company called FDI Enterprises, which is the manufacturing arm that makes our resin, which is one component of our foam insulation, foaming agent catalyst, which is the second component of it, and then the parts and equipment that go in the trucks to actually propel and install those products. So overall, there are about 40 total employees throughout the 3 different companies, and they're all kind of working together to help each other out to support our franchisees in the field.
So 40 employees. Maybe talk about specifically around the support of the franchisee side outside of manufacturing. Do you have a marketing department still, or did that end up getting changed as you joined Riverside? Do you still have a finance department, a franchise sales department? Did you bring anything in house? What does that look like?
We do. So franchise development, we have one franchise development director who's in charge of development. We have a marketing team that's headed up by a director of marketing, but we leverage third party, our ad placement, our IT, as well as our production. So those are all farmed out still for third party. We don't have anybody in house doing that kind of work for us from the marketing standpoint. Then in home sales, we have a director of sales support. In fact, he just started on Monday, and we're excited about his growth and development. But that person is solely sourced on selling and understanding the six-step sales process to our franchisees and supporting them in the field. You know, the two things we didn't bring in-house, never have, has been accounting. We have a third-party controller and bookkeeper in HR. The holding company, and the name of the holding company is newly branded Threshold Brands, which is the new holding company that we're now a part of, has a strong HR team that we kind of rolled up in there. We still utilize our third-party accounting because they're just great to work with. And that's it. Everything else that we have is in-house to support our franchisees.
That's really interesting that you've kept accounting outside as a contractor effectively. Maybe if we could, let's talk a little bit about, you know, since we talked about your history and how you started the business and where you are today. If you could go back and change anything in terms of how you run the business, would you do anything differently? And maybe just some context on this. I'll just kind of share as you're thinking about that question. My own personal experience when we started 5-Star Painting. Early on, we attracted all of our franchisees using different forms of marketing. We never leveraged brokers at all, and we frankly put off using brokers as a franchise system for years because we didn't want to pay a commission that was so significant to that third party group. And I look back and I think about how much faster we could have grown as a business had we leveraged that, which we do today extensively with our brands. Right. Yeah, I'd love to hear about from your perspective. Do you regret outsourcing it to a third party outfit to do franchise sales? Do you use brokers? Is there anything you do differently?
Good question. So I would say I don't regret using third party people to sell our brand because frankly that's all we can afford to do, and we didn't really make the commitment. That's the one issue I think that we had. So it's been 16 years now. We really haven't had any sort of steady or rapid growth until we brought on somebody in house, and he's very good at what he does. But we also have what he does all day long is he reps our brand. I was on a panel probably 6-7 years ago. I don't know how I got on this panel. I shouldn't have been on it, but I was there at IFA, and it was me and it was Steve Greenbaum, who at the time had just come off his stint, I think, as chairman of IFA, and one of the audience was just either emerging franchisors or people looking to franchise their existing business, and they asked the question, "What's most important in your business? Is it starting off? Is it development or is it operations and support?" And I answered the question first. Very proud of myself as I said, well, of course it's operations and support. If you outkick your coverage and oversell too much, you can't service your people, things can go south pretty fast. And I kind of went a little deeper into that answer, but I believe that being an operations person, you want to be able to kind of nurture a new franchisee all the way from inception to the top of the mountain. And I finished my answer, and Steve Greenbaum just said 3 words. He said, "Development all the way." And I think what he meant was, nothing happens till you sell something. And I think we were both right to a degree that you can't sell 100 units in your first year because you're never going to be able to open them. But you can't be afraid to invest in development because without that, nothing is going to happen. So I wish I would have brought somebody in house much earlier who would have had a lot faster growth from that regard. Yeah,
I think that's. But I think that kind of speaks to your culture, Patrick, and kind of your commitment, right? I know you long enough now to know that you really want to make sure your franchisees are successful, right? That's something that's really near and dear to you. So I think that's kind of coming out in that answer, and I think that's there's wisdom there as well, right? But like.
Sorry, Scott. Can you hear me okay? I can't hear you.
I got it. Can you
All
hear
right, there
me
we go. All right, good.
now? Okay. Talk to me about your FDD. Let me know what has changed over the years with your FDD, and what are some things you wish you had included in there earlier on?
Our FDD isn't still it's very strong. I think over the last few years, we've bolstered our item 19 because we realize that there are things being set out there that we have to make sure we're disclosing. That being said, we've actually tapered that back quite a bit. In this last go round, as you know, for being in the business so long, first quarter is a heavy push to get the FDD out there. And we've kind of curtailed a lot of what we added to the item 19. So for the last 10 years, we really sell on the item 19. We had profitability was very strong, margins were there, validation was really great. It was a kind of smaller subset of only 25 owners out there that were validating. We found that we've had to make some changes and really kind of pull back on item 19 in this last round. I also found that we want to under promise and over deliver from a training standpoint. And we have a running list every year of the things we want to update and change based on the things that are occurring out there in the field. And we're finding that you can't get in trouble if you don't overpromise. And I think now we're just trying to figure out how we make sure that we do what we say we're going to do in that FDD in the event that anything came about. Those are the two big things in the FDD. We're also very detailed in our operations side, item 7. Everything they have to get, we spell out in the notes very specifically, because there is a component to our business that they're buying a $95,000 truck with all the contents in it, making sure that that is well defined and brought up to speed. So from the training standpoint, being very defined, item 19, cutting it down to only what we need to showcase, and just not over promising.
Yeah, so I'm assuming that with Riverside's deal you guys did in December, and you're now reframing the FDD here in 2021, did they make any suggestions around making changes like, increasing your ad fund fee or adding a tech fee or any other kind of adjustments?
A few of them. We came out in December, and I think as soon as we got on board, we started working on the FDD. Now we're the 5th brand to come on in the threshold system. So Made Pro and FlyFo and Men in Kilts were the first 3. Pest Master was the 4th, and we were quickly the 5th. So I think there was a want and a need to get on the same FDD, which makes perfect sense. And I think some of the changes were they wanted to be more franchise friendly. They wanted to figure out ways to attract candidates that made it easier for them to become franchisees, but at the same time keep the parameters in place. And the process was great. And that's kind of what I love about this, is that we get to kind of learn from each other's FDDs and franchise agreements of what makes the most sense for home services. Because you have a maid company, we have a pest control company, and an installation company, all very different. But being a part of that process was, I think, something that I really, frankly, found unique and exciting to me when we were acquired at the end of last year. So those kinds of things, I think, streamlining them across all brands was a unique experience for us, and a bit of a sprint to make sure we got it done in the right amount of time.
That you actually, in speaking about that, joining a group of 5 companies, you kind of spoke a little bit about some of the values that come from having or being part of a conglomerate. Maybe just talk a little bit more about the value you get of working with other brand presidents and other companies and their perspectives. How often are you guys linking up? Do you have like a weekly meeting you're talking with other brand presidents, or maybe speak a little bit about how you interact with those other owners?
Yeah. So we're kind of still in our 100-day sprint. So we're still working with the integration component, making sure that we're getting a lot of boxes checked and we're understanding all of our processes and systems and sharing it with them. Threshold Brands has been great about getting feedback from us, and really, part of the reason that we wanted to look at this merger, this acquisition, is because we felt like there was some information and help that we needed from somebody that's been there, done that. Made Pro had over 220 units, and they kind of understood how to do things a little bit stronger and better, like franchise advisory boards, or working on their business coaches that we frankly didn't have any generalist coaches. So we interface with them every week. On the brand president side, there are a couple that are still open, so I haven't had a chance to interface with them. But the chief of brands, the COO, I'm in contact with every couple of days, and they've been great with support and kind of helping things out. I mean, the unique part about this is we're not 15 or 20 down the line. We're the 5th, And I think we're all acknowledging the fact that it's a relative startup with great backing from Riverside, but also pedigree from the folks that come from the Made Pro, FlyFo, and Men in Kilt side too. So that's been a great interaction working with them to try and just kind of build the ship as we're moving along.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about that. How have you seen your responsibilities change now that you're part of a conglomerate, or do you find that what you did a year ago is pretty much what you're doing now?
I think the change now, it hasn't been much yet. It's only been 5 months. I think stepping back even before that, I had personally to go from a doer to a manager to a leader. The first 10 years, maybe 8 years, I was doing a lot of doing. I was kind of the one who was making all the manuals, who was working through our staff to make sure things are getting done, be more of a task manager. And then I kind of transitioned to being a manager of maybe 5 or 6 direct reports. For me, that was a sea change that I wasn't equipped to do just on my own. So, and Scott, I don't know if you work with this or not. We run EOS, we run Entrepreneur Operating System.
Yeah.
For me, it was just something that was a no-brainer because it allowed me to just kind of set a cadence, look out for 10 years where we want to be, break it down to a 3 and a 1 year goal, and then a quarterly process. So that for me got me from the doer to the manager, and then being part of EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, helped me become that leader that I'm ever trying to become. So that was kind of before the Riverside acquisition. Now not much has changed from what I do now. I think we have some more reporting. We answer more questions. And the questions that we answer, frankly, are the ones we always should have been asking if you're a strong business owner. So that's kind of been the process over the last 5 months.
Yeah, I got to imagine, and just a big plug here for those who don't know what EO is, it's called the Entrepreneur Organization. I've been a member for 11 years. It's a kind of a peer-to-peer group for entrepreneurs that want to connect with fellow entrepreneurs, and Patrick's a member as well. And it's been a great experience for me personally as well. But I'd like to talk a little bit more about, being a founder, running your own business, not reporting to anyone, not having a board of directors, not having anyone looking over your shoulder for years, 16 years almost, in your business. And now in a position where, someone's asking questions and they are expecting some form of reporting. Tell me more about that. Like,
yeah,
has that been good for you? You kind of hinted that it's helped, but maybe speak to that a little bit.
I look at this two ways, Scott. I think it's what's good for the business and what's good for me. And when I pull in the driveway here, me takes a back seat to the business. So for me, it's been a lot of change. It's been a lot of change for the organization, for our staff. I saw this coming in June of last year, but remember that, while we were in the courting and the due diligence process, it was me and my business partner putting the whole thing together. So I was prepared for this. I was talking to their staff. I was doing and answering a lot of questions even before we were acquired. So I understood what we were getting into. In the day that I announced it to the staff and to the franchisees, they were in shock to a degree. And I think that's a natural response. And I think it takes time to unravel that. We have a really strong culture. We have a really tight-knit group here, and we think we're really good at what we do. Luckily, the Threshold brand folks have a very similar culture to us, and they have a very similar process to us, which I knew about going into this. But the change for me is really helping lead and support our staff. I mean, I'll be honest, I don't get the brunt of the requests and the reporting our staff does. So how do we replicate that every week or every month or whatever that cadence may be to make it easier for us and them to be able to pull information? So there's a bit of a puzzle that we're trying to put together in the first 5 months, but it's coming together, and it's just helping them get to where they need to be, because that's the business side. On the personal side, there's a whole stretch of kind of emotions and feelings that I went and am going through that, somebody asked yesterday, how's it going? And I think on the personal side, I told them I have relief and regret every day. And it just means that I'm relieved from a lot of things, right? I'm able to sleep a bit better at night, take some chips off the table, and be part of something bigger, which is really exciting to me. And to be able to learn from folks who have been there and done that several times, that's really exciting. And then the regret is, it's no longer my identity. Did I sell too soon? Did I sell too late? Those kinds of things, just run through your brain, but they're not, those thoughts begin to fleet a little bit when you focus on the goal that we have is to grow this business and be the best we can be over the next 3 to 5 years.
I love it. And thanks for being authentic and sharing some of those emotions that you've gone through and are still going through, and I'm sure you will be going through for a while.
Yeah.
We're all human that way, and that is definitely part of our human nature. You hinted at something there around EOS and visioning and where you want to be in 10 years. Maybe just talk to us about that. Where do you think USA Installation will be in 10 years? And kind of a fall into that same question, what is keeping you up at night?
Okay. So 4 years ago, we put together a 10-year plan, and our 10-year plan was to have 150 units. So we were never going to be a 10,000 unit system or even a 500 unit system. 150 units is kind of our sweet spot over the next 5 years. We're a mobile business and we cover a lot of ground. I see this business potentially taking on, so we have our proprietary foam insulation that's meant for closed cavities. I think there's an opportunity for us to bolt on manufacturing for spray foam or polyurethane spray foam, which, if those of you don't know, it's that kind of spray on foam on an open cavity. It grows off the wall. There's a chance for us to work in that capacity. I think getting into Canada would be big for us. We're in Cleveland. We're just across the lake from Canada, and there's a great deal of opportunity for insulating existing structures up there. And finally, I think commercial work and government work. We focus 95% of our work on existing homes. I think we can really crack the code on getting government work, which could be recurring, both county, state, and federal, and then looking at commercial work. Not necessarily new construction, because there's some nuance to that we're not really built for, but retrofitting and updating commercial buildings for us. So continuing the process to grant units. The beauty of what we were trying to accomplish in our 10-year plan, it overlapped fairly well with what Riverside wanted to do. So they didn't come in and say, well, you want to grant 13 to 15 territories a year. We want to grant 30. They were realistic in that launch. So, but what I loved about it is we aligned, just looking at their 5-year plan to what ours was. They weren't very far off. So I can visualize and conceptualize where it's going to be. We already have those goals in place. We tweaked them a little bit. And now I feel like if we just follow the plan and process, we can get there together.
And so I love it. I love having that vision. I love how you're getting alignment with your team. Maybe talk a little bit about what worries you. Are you, is there anything that you go to bed at night and think, oh my gosh, if that happened, that'd be really hard?
Well, we had a pandemic last March. I mean, it's going to be hard to top that. The feelings that I had in March and April of last year, that was, we can get into that if you'd like. I think now, that was a time that I've never experienced that before, between what you read and what you hear and things you've never experienced before. We spent so much time, and I'm proud of this. We did our best to give back marketing and technology fund to our franchisees for a couple of straight months. We had calls with accounting firms and making sure that each and every one of our franchisees got their PPP loans, because if they weren't solvent and didn't survive, then we wouldn't be either. And really just kind of connecting with them. And there was always more we could have done, of course, because we always also wanted to focus on our 3 businesses and making sure that they were solidified. We had members of our staff take pay cuts for a couple of months and look me in the eye and say, I'm here with you, ready to do it, which I was so proud of. We did the same on our end, and we were able to kind of make them whole at the end of the year. So climbing out of that hole was something that, there were plenty of sleepless nights back then, but as I'm sure a lot of home services folks on this call experienced, as June and July started to tick up, I wouldn't use the term hockey stick growth, but it got back in a hurry. And we saw our fourth quarter be our best fourth quarter we've ever seen. What keeps me up at night now, I think, almost on the personal side, right? So I've been invested in this business for 16 years, and my thought was, if I needed something, I'd go out and get it. If I needed to grow the business, if I needed more money or more of this or more X, I'd make it happen. I think now that there's a plan in place, we just have to follow through with it. So on the personal side, it is, what's in it for me in the next 10 or 20 years, and what's gonna be in store for me. And that's kind of where EO helps me stay grounded and get experience shares from others who have been through it to help me stay the course and decide what's next.
I think so many of us on this call have experienced that whipsaw effect, where we saw demand disappear in March and April, like almost nothing. And then all of a sudden being in a position where Q4 and Q1 are just, it's like, how do you go from not having any work to having too much work so quickly in such a short period of time? Maybe talk a little bit about, you've lived through recession, 2009, 2010. You've lived through now COVID, and in a weird way, it's been good for home services, hard for other industries, but it's been good for us in general. Yeah, a lot of people are that's going to be coming, and there's a lot of uncertainty in the marketplace. How do you prepare for that? What do you do differently, or how are you thinking around those things?
It starts with us, with the franchisees. I think as a franchisor, we need to make sure that we continue to do what's best for them, and I mean that because they're the ones that drive revenue. They're the ones that are out there doing it every day to provide us with what we have every day. We're lucky in a sense that in 2009 and 10, the recession almost helped us a bit because people weren't buying new houses. They were hunkering down, and instead of spending money on countertops or on new fancy, fill in the blanks, they were being more practical, pragmatic, and spending $3,000 to $7,000 on insulating their home to be more comfortable and cutting their energy bills. So that was helpful for us. I think this recession could be a bit different because I think we're flying so high that the higher you get, the further you fall. But focusing on our franchise health is important. Not overkicking, our coverage. And what I mean by that is not trying to overdevelop and oversell and not service them. You mentioned that whipsaw approach to us. By end of summer, we were keeping our staff steady, and it was a balancing act of our existing owners and new owners. Now we're trying to figure out the same thing, only, we typically have a ramp up in fourth quarter. We're seeing a bigger ramp up now in the spring, that we're trying to make sure that we have the support staff in place to satisfy their growth, because the organic growth that they have and that we're seeing is really going to start to fall to the bottom line for us. So we're excited about their growth, but I can't focus on what we can't control. I learned that in March and April of last year, so that doesn't keep me up at night. I'm not going to worry about it. I think we have to just keep following the plan and process, and I think it'll be okay.
Maybe talk a little bit about, and you're right, Patrick, right? I mean, the last thing you want to do is be sitting there thinking about all the things you can't control and worrying about it. And I think entrepreneurs tend to be very positive, right? We're very optimistic around the future and what we can do. But I'd love to just hear maybe some candid stuff around, have you thought, for example, is your royalty the same since you started in 2004? Have you increased it? Did you have an ad fund the whole time? Did you increase that? Are you trying to find ways to kind of put some things away while the going is going so well, or has it been pretty stable the entire time?
Interesting question. In 16 years, we've never raised our royalty. It's always been 5%.
Okay.
Now I would say that we make revenue streams in two different areas, right? So we keep our royalties fairly low, competitively speaking, because we do make a margin on our product that we sell to our franchisees. So it sort of balances out there. And that product price is still very competitive to our owners. Their margins are still strong. Our marketing and tech fund is a bit different. So it is a marketing and technology fund bolted together. So when it comes to the website, to any kind of digital creations, to production, all that is kind of brought to you or brought to our franchisees through that marketing and tech fund. And then when we were acquired, the question was, okay, why is there a fair amount of money in this marketing and tech fund? Don't you spend that every year? And our thought has always been, we're kind of in the middle stage of growth. We're not big enough to have national advertising campaigns yet. We've done some targeted regional campaigns, but I don't want to spend money on just to spend money. I treat the money as if it's our own for the benefit and enhancement of our franchisees. So that's been at 2% really for the last 16 years. So I can't speak for what's going to happen in the future, but I think margins are right, and it seems to be the right amount of percentage points for both of those pieces for us.
You did mention though that when when COVID hit there in March and April, you went ahead and gave your franchisees a break on their ad fund fees and some, a break on their royalties. Is that something that, you think that you got to be prepared to do in the future recession, or is that something that was very specific to that environment?
That was very specific. I think, they were shut down, frankly. I mean, we were shut down in our Cleveland office for almost 2 months. So, and it was all state by state. We're in 15 different states. Some states like New York were devastated for over 2 months, and other states were pretty loose and pretty lax. So I thought it was the right thing to do across the board was just frankly give it back to them. So whatever 2% they paid in those 2 months, we just put it right back, and hopefully they was able to pay their bills and get back up to speed. What we didn't know is that PPP was going to be so strong and lucrative, and there was going to be a second wave of that that it helped itself out later in the year. But at the time, we were just trying to figure out ways to keep them going. We don't know if it was going to last for 2 months or 12 months.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's dive in a little bit more to. We have 5 minutes left here on my questions, but let's talk a little bit more about just your experience around selling to Riverside. Maybe just speak to, you signed an LOI. Just who'd you use? How'd you? I'm assuming this is your first time in a transaction. What's the roller coaster of emotions you're going through? What kind of the realities of selling your business? Did you have a business broker that was helping you? Did you do it by yourself? Kind of speak to that side of the transaction.
Yeah, we did hire a business broker. We've talked to a couple of different companies prior to Riverside. Didn't work out for whatever reason. In knowing what Riverside brings to the table and the due diligence process that they brought, I had to bring in someone to represent us. I felt like if I didn't, I'd be bringing a knife to a gunfight. So we did bring in somebody to really help us through. Brought an outside counsel to help us on the legal side, and also our accountants that we work with to help. But as I said earlier, the due diligence process is heavy. I mean, it is a part-time job, and we're working several hours of every day, going through a litany of questions and back and forth. And we wanted to get it closed within 2 months. It ended up being about twice that long. But I will say it was an interesting process. And even if it didn't happen, it was an exercise that I thought was very valuable, because they uncovered they asked a lot of thought-provoking questions. And it was something that I think they're using, those holes that may have been in our due diligence process, to help fill in some of the gaps in their approach to how we grow the business. But the emotional side of it, there wasn't an emotion that I didn't go through in those 4 months. I will say that I think I caught COVID on the 18th or so of December, so I signed the agreement when I was sick. I was lucid, so there's nothing wrong there, but it was definitely just a kind of a crazy whirlwind a couple of days before Christmas. And then I just kind of hit the ground running the next week. So it was almost like you wake up the next day and you feel the same and nothing's changed, and you just go back to work.
I love that you shared that, because often you hear, people want to get a deal done in a couple of months, but the reality is often it takes 4 months and sometimes more. I'm assuming in that process, you're going back and forth frequently on your agreements and what they look like. And there's probably some things in there you didn't like, or you did like when you finally did sign. Maybe one of the things you may have liked, let's talk a little bit about, you closed a couple of days before Christmas. What a nice Christmas gift, I'm sure, to you for the many years of hard work that you've put into the business. Any fun purchase did you do, or you just kind of sock it all away and just back to work?
So before I answer, I will tell you a quick story about you. So I think we were at Unconference, I don't know, whenever, it was a couple of weeks or months after you sold. And I think you were telling the group that you brought your family on a Hawaiian vacation or something like that, right? Or something that you did to kind of celebrate, which I thought was really cool. And I never really forgot that. So when we, we closed over the phone, so there was no real ceremonial or pomp or circumstances, just kind of you make the close and, the clock keeps ticking and you have dinner that night. There's not a lot going on. But I'm really crummy at celebrating. I know that's one of my developmental needs, and I hadn't done anything yet. I bought my wife a nice gift because I think she's been so strong and so helpful with what I've been doing over especially last year. But I didn't buy myself a darn thing. And I just kind of think to myself, and then what? So I buy a nice watch, then what? I buy a nice car, then what? So I think I'm a little maybe over practical when it comes to that. I think there'll come a time where I celebrate, whether it's whimsical or when I figure out what the next stage of my life is going to be. There might be an opportunity for that, but not a whole lot's changed for me, Scott. So I feel like I'm just trying to unwind the personal side of the finances, but also just keep pushing ahead and keep growing.
So I'm going to just pick at that a little bit, because having gone through this a couple of times, can you hear me okay, Patrick? My mic just went, okay, great. All of a sudden you're in a position where as an entrepreneur, you put so much of your resources and your money and your time and energy into something, right? And so you don't have time to think about, a retirement fund or, diversifying your portfolio or trying to find some way to manage different risks and so forth, because it's all being bet on black. Every day you come to work and it's all bet on black again, every morning. And all of a sudden your bank account grew and you have this new problem. where do I invest my money? Earning 0.001% interest rate kind of sucks, right? So as a good owner and steward, I imagine you want to put some of that money to work. Did you go buy some Bitcoin, or did you just is it just all in cash and you're waiting to do something with it?
Well, that's why private equity folks are so smart. I mean, they know where to put their money, right? They invest in businesses that they can grow. It's tough out there because putting your money in the market can be a crapshoot. Putting your money in housing, I think it's the height of the market. It might not be the best investment either. I haven't bought Bitcoin. I did buy some Ethereum a couple of months ago just because it just seemed like the crazy world that we live in. It had to go up, and it has gone up, but it could also go way down tomorrow morning. So I've done a little bit of that. I've diversified in a couple different investments outside of the business, just frankly in kind of commercial real estate and things like that. But nothing I've sunk my teeth into, and nothing that has taken any of my time. Truthfully, it's just kind of working with friends and people I trust and know to put money into. But that's really it. I think I'm taking a slower approach. While I can be cost conscious and methodical with where my money goes, I can also be impulsive sometimes. So I know that about myself. So last thing I want to do is get into the wrong thing with the money that I have. So I'm kind of taking some caution towards it.
Yeah, there's probably some wisdom there. It seems like at every meeting I go to, someone asks about Dogecoin or something like that in the meeting. It's just a crazy world we live in right now. And I know how hard you must have worked to create the business you created. And I just look at this and go, man, there are people who have basically created something that's ethereal, doesn't really exist, but somehow are now billionaires. And it's amazing to me. I'm just not that smart, Patrick. I haven't figured out how to create a coin yet.
Me neither. I had lunch with a guy yesterday, and he said that he worked in Sweden 9 years ago. He was probably 28. And these guys from Sweden were all talking about this thing called Bitcoin. And they invested whatever little they had in the company 9 years ago. And now they're retired at age 40. But it's just kind of the thing that by the time it gets to us, it's too late. By the time I hear about Ethereum, the chances are I'm not going to become a millionaire overnight. Yeah. It's just kind of a little investment that's fun to see what happens.
I love it. But it's enjoyable, right? I don't know if I get the same joy of seeing Dogecoin go up as I do out of seeing a franchisee be successful and create something meaningful. So there's some value there. Let's go ahead and open up the questions now to the live crew here. Thanks everyone for letting me know my audio sucked. I can see that. I'm not sure what's going on. My mic is having some problems, but I'm not touching it anymore, so I think we're okay. We'll go ahead and go to Wade Millward. He's got a question for you. How were you able to establish an effective feedback loop from your franchisees? And were they engaged from the beginning, or did it have to be developed over time? How is it now after the acquisition?
So feedback loop is interesting. We have, I think, a couple of different waves of owners, if you will. We had kind of a legacy group of folks who were with us in the first 5 years, kind of this middle group who have kind of grown with us and kind of seen the most of our growth. And then we have a new wave of franchisees over the last, 18 months or so. So I look at kind of them in 3 different groups, not good or bad, just different groups. Feedback loop we're getting better at. I think we've started off with monthly calls to collaborate with them. We frankly travel to go see them as much as we can. I think the challenge can be we have to provide value in all the conversations that we have and listen. We've put together a peer performance group about 3 years ago as part of that EOS process I was talking about. We brought in an EOS implementer. We said, look, anybody that wants to be part of EOS, we're going to help pay for that for the first year. We'll pay for half out as a franchisor. You can pool your resources to pay for the other half. We had 5 franchisees opt to be part of that PPG group. And that group, after the first 18 months, have all doubled their business and then some. And now that those 5 franchisees are about 40% of our system-wide revenue. So they push each other, honestly. I mean, we started off with us kind of helping and working through it, and now they meet quarterly no matter what. They have kind of a brotherhood amongst themselves, and they come to us with new ideas. They've almost kind of exceeded what we can bring to the table, which to me is the best part of collaboration. And to answer your question about how things are now with Riverside, I think there was an initial kind of shock and concern about what's happening. I think the beauty of what's going on is between Riverside and Threshold and USA Franchise LLC and our franchisees, there are about 3 or 4 steps that impact gets down to them. So they haven't felt a whole lot of that. I think the good news is they've been free to really grow and drive their business. And they've had a heck of a fourth quarter last year and first quarter of this year. So it's almost like if it ain't broke, don't fix it approach. But at the same time, we still want to figure out from an operations and support side of things, and from the in-home sales side, how do we tweak and make it better? And a lot of it's through our franchise owners. In fact, we have a franchise owner now, it's helping us in new office launch, and he's great. And he's really helping us see the blind spots that we don't have as a franchise corporation. So that collaboration has been really helpful.
Patrick, I think that's a super valuable share you just gave us there. And I am not. Patrick, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's the browser or my mic, but what you just said there was, I think, super valuable. And I've never heard of a franchisor that has done that, where you've actually paid for a training program to a third party like EOS and had EOS step in and train your franchisees. And the outcome, you said it was you doubled your business, your franchisees doubled their business. And what period of time did that take to have happen?
A little less than 18 months. And I learned that from, Shelly Sun gave a presentation on that at IFA about 5 years ago. And you kind of, being an EO, you kind of hear about this system. It helped me so much, honestly, that I think if a franchise system were to employ that, it has to work. The accountability, the goal setting, the communication, it's just such a great environment. Not just EOS, by the way. It could be Rockefeller Habits, or it could be Scaling Up. Any of these programs that may want to, they're all very similar.
Yeah. And all clearly very, very effective. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
I've got another question here for you from Zach, but before I ask it, I got one more for you that I'd like to just hear from. You mentioned you had to obviously announce to the franchisees that you sold the business. I'm assuming many of these have been with you for years, right? You've got 35 or so franchisees owning 60 locations. Talk us through how you announced that. Was there any negative feedback at all? How did you position that in a way that people got really excited about the fact that you'd sold?
Sure. I mean, I think there are a range of responses and emotions. So we have a level 10 meeting or a group meeting every Monday morning with our franchise support center. I announced it to them during that period of time. Then I had one-on-ones with them each individually right after that. And then right after lunch, asked for a call with the ownership earlier the week prior. So I had a call with them, and again, we're all Zoom, so it was tough to really connect with them, but I kind of laid out what happened. And Threshold Brands gave me a great kind of walk-through process to be able to communicate to them. And of course, I made it my own. And then I just kind of talked to them, people individually. And I had questions from new owners who just signed a couple of months prior that were nervous about what was going to happen, all the way to legacy owners. And we have one owner who's been with us since when my father started the business 35 years ago. And he was the one I was a little concerned about. He just called me and said, "Hey, congratulations. I'm so happy for you. Good for you." And those are the kinds of things that validated what we're trying to accomplish. In the short term, they probably won't see much change in development because we're still an infant in this kind of relationship. It's only been 5 months. And as things progress, we're able to put more processes in place and just really more help and more money and more things to help them grow. But that was an initial, concern. And I'd be lying if I said that they're all 100% on board and feeling like it's the right thing now. I think some folks felt like this was always kind of a family business, and it always will be. But one of the reasons I did this is because I felt like we needed help to catapult to the next level. That 50 unit mark was always kind of that watermark where you need to kind of decide what you're going to do to get to 150. And also, I wanted to make sure that my father's legacy in this business was going to continue forever with or without me. And I'm not saying I'm going anywhere, but I think this is something that would ensure that USA Insulation will be here to stay and will be under the right tutelage and the right management for years to come. So I'm excited about that.
I think that what you said there is really important. And I think what I heard from what you were saying as well is communicate. What was so critical in that was making sure you're talking. You did one-on-one calls with each of your franchisees to make sure that they knew, why you did what you did and make that connection. I think that's really, really valuable. So thanks for sharing that. Let's go back to our crew here. Zach Nolte, good to see you, Zach. Thanks for joining us. As a question, How many people do you have in your field support staff, and what are some of the titles of those support personnel?
So what we don't have now, Zach, we don't have franchise business coaches or generalists, which is something that I think Threshold is going to really help with. Those are the folks that are kind of the everyday communications with our franchisee, helping out in all four facets of our business. What we do have is a director of marketing, who, and Lisa, she works with our franchisees every day and our vendors to help support our franchisees every day. We have a director of sales support, who his sole focus is to help our franchisees sell more, help with their average ticket, help with their sales closing rate, and help with our 6-step sales process. We have an operations director who really is tasked with helping our franchisees in the field. We have 4 people that help our franchisees in the field now, between kind of equipment and truck support and actually install and application support. And then we have several really just kind of field support people. So we have a VP of operations who's been with us for 10 years, frankly, as a consultant for 9 of those years, and just came on board early this year as our VP of operations. So he's really been steeped in the USA ways, but is great to inject himself and understands the business really well. And then we also utilize our general manager in our Cleveland-based business, who's an awesome guy and understands the business really well, and is kind of a beacon for our growth. His name is Jack. He is really good at what he does. So we kind of work as a team to help each other out. And then finally, our VP of production with FDI, he used to be the general manager in our Cleveland business, our service business, for 8 years. So we've been able to kind of move people around, and we always talk about the right people in the right seat. They got to be the right person first, and we'll find the right seat for them. So some folks have moved around a bit in the organization because, going to work every day, you spend more time with them in a day than you might spend with your spouse or significant other in a week. They got to be the right people, and then we'll find the right place for them at that point.
Thank you for sharing that. I'd love to just kind of double tap on something. You mentioned that with your transaction, you felt you were going to get some help from Riverside on having field consultants. Is that now part of the plan you have seen moving forward, that you're going to have some generalists that are doing just field support? Or how do you see that working now in the future?
I think it is. I think the vision is going to be continue to keep the support staff we have in place, have a dedicated launch specialist for us. Now we have a couple people in-house doing launch and blank and something else. Have a dedicated launch person that's going to help usher somebody through the signing of the agreement all the way to their launch, and even some post-launch. And then kind of a field specialist that's that one point of contact where they're the hub, and then we can get some of the spokes out to the 4 different pillars of the business. So I think that's going to be something they're looking to do, but we're trying to kind of feel our way through. Again, it's all about scalability also. So Threshold wants to make sure that they're doing the same thing for different franchise brands. Mm-hmm. It also works for the individual brand as well.
Got it. Well, Patrick, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for giving me an hour of your life and sharing that with so many other people who have tuned in. I'll just go ahead and just do some quick housekeeping again. We'll send a survey out after this, and if you could just please just rate the broadcast or show, give us some feedback on what we could do better. We really appreciate when you do that, and I look forward to seeing you all in a month with Josh Snolik from founder of Monster Tree, and now with Mighty Dog Roofing. Thanks, Patrick.
Anytime. Thanks, Scott. A pleasure. Bye-bye.